in New Delhi was like smoking 30 cigarettes a day. Now, I didn't know that at first. I just knew that it hurt to breathe. When I visited my extended family in India a few years ago, the air was so thick with smog that the skyline disappeared. My eyes stung, my throat burned, and I remember wondering how a city that alive could feel so hard to live in. That night, I looked it up. And when I read that statistic, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around the same time, I was doing some research when I stumbled upon a paper detailing the environmental cost of developing AI. The paper read that massive amounts of renewable energy were being wasted each year because the power grid, or essentially the system which takes energy from where it's made to where it can be used, couldn't store or distribute it fast enough. That line stopped me. Because isn't it true that almost everything we do online, streaming, searching, training AI, burns electricity? And does most of this electricity not still come from fossil fuels? That was the first time I realized that technology, the very thing I loved, was deeply connected to climate change. When I first started coding, I was just a curious kid with a laptop and way too much time on my hands. Programming felt like magic. I could create something out of nothing. First, little games, then apps, and eventually programs that could recognize patterns and predict what might happen next. That's what drew me to machine learning. At first, I was amazed by what it could do. Translate languages, drive cars, detect diseases. It seemed unstoppable. But the more I learned, the more I began to see the other side, the power it required to keep running. AI wasn't just learning from data. It was learning at the cost of enormous amounts of energy. Behind every AI model, search engine, or cloud service is a data center. These massive warehouses filled with computers that never turn off. They store and process almost everything we do online. In 2023, data centers around the world used 415 terawatt hours of electricity. That's enough to power 39 million American homes for a year. But by 2030, that number is projected to double, adding about 288 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's equal to 62.6 million cars emissions per year. Some companies are trying to power these data centers using renewable sources of energy, which sounds great in theory, except for one problem. The sun doesn't work on our schedule. Most solar energy peaks happen during the day, but most of our high energy intensive tasks run at night. And when more solar energy is produced than the grid can handle, that energy ends up being wasted, a situation called curtailment. So we were actively wasting renewable sources of energy while still using fossil fuels to power our systems. That, to me, felt like the ultimate contradiction. So I started wondering, what if data centers could predict when solar energy was most abundant in their area? If data centers had this information, they could plan their training to occur during those times, reducing reliance on fossil fuels. That question became the focus of my next year. I decided to build a machine learning model that could predict the next 24 hours of solar energy at any given location, whether that be a home, a city, or in this case, a data center. I used data from the United States National Solar Radiation Database, which tracks solar radiation and weather across the country. Things like temperature, humidity, cloud cover, and 3 key types of solar irradiance. The first is global horizontal irradiance, or the sunlight which hits flat surfaces. The second is diffuse normal irradiance, or the sunlight which hits panels. And the last is diffuse horizontal irradiance, or the sunlight scattered by clouds. I began with a random forest model, a type of machine learning model that predicts using many smaller decision trees. But I only wound up with an accuracy of around 35%. For context, this accuracy is calculated by running the model for many trials and comparing the predicted value to the actual value in the database. Therefore, I switched to a gradient boosting model, a type of machine learning model that learns from its past mistakes step by step and was ultimately better suited to my goal. Under this model, I achieved an accuracy of around 55%, a solid improvement given the complexity of solar patterns. To turn these sunlight predictions into usable energy, I multiplied the area of the solar panels times their efficiency times the sunlight's intensity. Finally, I built a web app to visualize my results. The user can enter a latitude and longitude of any given location, and the output is a prediction for the next 24 hours of solar energy in that area, displayed as a simple graph. I decided to test this out in theory, so I chose Loudoun County, Virginia, as a test case. Loudoun County is one of the world's largest clusters of data centers and uses 1/4 of all electricity in Virginia. Using my model's predictions, I estimated how much solar energy would meet their demands if they trained at the right times. I then scaled this estimate to all 5,426 data centers across the country. The impact was clear. If data centers used predicted solar surges to time their training, they could reduce carbon emissions in the atmosphere by 69.2 million metric tons. That's the equivalent to taking 6.4 million cars off the road. I mean, even just the curtailed energy or the previously wasted energy could cut down another 2.2 million metric tons, or roughly 500,000 cars. Now, I'm still looking to improve my model. I'm currently integrating real-time data from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association and looking into how I can extend my predictions to beyond 24 hours. I also want to try incorporating wind energy and other renewables to maximize the impact of my work. I started this project trying to make a real impact and solve a technical problem. But I ended up realizing it's not always about coding smarter systems. It's about understanding the systems we're already part of, namely the environment. We often celebrate AI for what it can create, but we rarely ask what it costs. And I don't mean money. I mean energy. I mean the environment. Sustainability isn't about creating more. It's about using what we already have, just more wisely. If we can teach AI to adapt to the planet instead of forcing the planet to adapt to us, then technology can finally become part of the climate solution. Because the future of AI doesn't have to cost the Earth. It can help save it.